We are back today. We're going to be talking about something grotesque and horrible because it's Halloween season, everybody. How you doing today, Maddie?
Spooky season. I'm doing all right, thank you.
Well, we're going to talk about something spooky today. We're going to be talking about things like werewolves and cannibals. Are werewolves officially cannibals? Is that what, or are they're wolves, so that's not really cannibalism, right?
I think you're bringing up an excellent point there, Chris. And to be honest, I don't know the answer. Well, I'm going to tell you something that you might not know. Werewolves, when you become an actual wolf, real life werewolves, they're fiction. They're not real.
Okay. Whew.
But we have a case today of actual clinical lycanthropy. So on my podcast Murder Coaster, which you guys should all check out, we have been doing werewolves all month long. We did the medieval werewolf trials where thousands of accused werewolves were burned alive at the stake.
Ooh.
Do you know in France alone in the 1500s, over 30,000 people were accused of being werewolves?
Whoa.
Yeah, and we also cover famous serial killers that were thought to be werewolves or nicknamed werewolves, like Fritz Hamann, the Wolfman of Hanover.
Was he really hairy, or was that just because he...
No, they were finding these victims. They were finding these skulls in the river, in the Lean River. Is that how you say it? And
okay.
Back then, people didn't understand what a serial killer was, and they didn't understand like a sexual psychopath, a sexually sadistic psychopath. It was beyond their comprehension. So they would often fall back on folklore and things like that. And they couldn't wrap their mind around what a serial killer was. So instead, they would call him a werewolf.
Interesting. So they weren't necessarily hairy, but that kind of grew with the myth about them.
Well, Fritz Hamann, he would rip the throats out of his victims while he was raping them with his bare teeth.
Ooh.
Which, that's pretty werewolfy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not vegan.
Not very vegan at all, I would have to say.
And then you know what he would do with them, Chris? He would butcher the bodies and sell the meat on the black market.
Oh,
because
wow.
there was no meat around because it was post World War I. And a good cut of meat would get you a bit of money. So he would sell it as pork.
Waste not, what not.
Yeah, waste not, what not. There you go. The motto of Fritz Hamann.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't mind the cannibalism so much because, if you're going to eat a cow, you might as well eat a person. That's how I feel about it.
What about you can grow yourself in a lab now and eat yourself?
Did you ever see that movie, The Island, where they're like big clones of them were being grown inside of a place and then they harvest their organs?
Yeah, that's a great film.
That's dark.
So, but I know that you're into social justice and things like that, and examining class and privilege. So I thought I would bring this case to your show of werewolves. It's spooky season. We're werewolves, but this is also, I think, really demonstrates some of the class structure here in the United States. And we have this guy, Austin Harrouff. It's funny because he's a lycanthrope and his name is Harrouff, but I guess it's not funny. Whatever. This guy was very privileged. He was grew up in Palm Beach, Florida. His father was a cosmetic dentist, so he's from a lot of class, a lot of privilege, and he was a jock. He was a football star in high school. He was 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. He's a weightlifter. He could bench press, I think, like 300 pounds or more or something like that. And he went to college in Florida, and he was studying like physical education and bodybuilding and things like that. And he's a frat boy. He was in a frat, but supposedly he didn't party that hard in the frat. Like, he wasn't really into drinking. He wasn't known for that. Because he was really into his health, really into, bodybuilding and things like that. There's a lot of rumors of him being into drugs, and there's some interesting text messages. But from all the research I've done on this case, most of his friends say he really didn't do drugs. He just smoked a little pot now and then. But on August 15th, 2016, this frat boy started acting weird. First, he was going up to his mother and his sister and saying that he was immortal and he felt like a superhero. And he went hiking with his father, and he said there was an evil presence in the woods that was trying to come into his soul. And they went to dinner, but on the way to dinner, he started darting into traffic. And when his sister's like, "What are you doing?" He said, "I need to test my powers." So they go to dinner, and he starts acting erratically. He turns into the male Karen and starts complaining about the waiter and saying that the service is bad and the food should have been there. And he just gets up and leaves. And his mother lived a couple miles away. He walks to his mom's house, goes in and grabs cooking oil and starts trying to drink cooking oil and eating raw Parmesan cheese. And his mother comes in and is like, "What are you doing? Your father's worried about you. You need to go back." So his mother puts him in the car and drives him back to the restaurant. So he gets back to the restaurant and he starts acting crazy again. And at one point, his father grabs him and shakes him and is like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why are you acting this way?" And interesting to note, he was wearing a red "Make America Great" hat again.
Oh, boom, right there. See, I was waiting for that. I knew it. Make America great again? Are you serious?
Yeah.
I told you, I warned you about these guys.
He leaves the restaurant. He's got no phone. He's got no wallet. And his parents, he just wanders away and there, no one knows where he is. And his parents are actually, they understand that something's wrong. He's acting completely irrational. They've never seen him act like this. And they call the cops and they tell the cops, "Our son is missing. He's acting crazy." And they also call his fraternity house and tell his frat friends. And so his frat brothers go out looking for him and everyone's looking for him. Meanwhile, there is these lovely couple, John Stevens and his wife, Michelle. John's 59 years old and his wife, Michelle's 53 years old. They're living there in Jupiter, Florida, and they have converted their garage into a den. It's really cool. They have like a huge flat screen TV, 3 sofas, a pool table, a Jimmy Buffett style bar. They would often play Jimmy Buffett and drink. It's very Florida. I mean, she called it their garage mahal. I mean, and they would open the garage door up and the neighborhood was invited to come in there. Anybody who wanted could come in there. And I know, right? Meanwhile, Austin is ripping off his clothes. He loses his hat somewhere. It would have been really wild if he was wearing the hat. And he comes to this open garage. Immediately, he would later claim that he thought Michelle was a witch trying to take away his powers. He leaps in there, grabs her, starts stabbing her, bashing her. Her husband comes out. He grabs him, starts stabbing him. The neighbor right next door hears this screaming coming from the garage. He runs over. Austin stabs him several times, stabs him in the back, stabs him in the side. And this guy's just like barefoot. He's just like running over to see what the matter is. And he manages to escape. And he lives. He's been stabbed several times. And he calls the cops. The 911 call's out there. You can actually listen to it if you want to. And a policewoman arrives. And the policewoman looks in the garage, and he has got John Stevens in a bear hug, and he is eating his face, ripping off huge chunks of his face and devouring them. And so she tases him. She beats him with a baton, and it does nothing to him. Now more police officers arrive. They tase him as well. They start kicking him in the face, and it's doing nothing. He is just eating this man's face off. And eventually they come with a police dog. And when they release the police dog on him, the police dog bites him. All of a sudden he stops and he lets go. And they put him in handcuffs. And he says, I need to go to the hospital. I'm sick. I've eaten something bad. And they say, "What did you eat?" And he goes, "Human." And coughs up a huge hunk of fucking flesh, man. But the truth is he had ate something bad. Sometime when he had gotten into that garage, he had ingested cleaning products. He had like guzzled down bleach or something, and his liver was failing. He was taken to the hospital and he went into a coma. But he came out of the coma, I think 2 weeks later. It took a while for him to come out of the coma. And when he did, guess who came in there through via satellite? Old Dr. Phil. That guy is such a fucking bloodsucker. This guy's coming out of a coma and he somehow weasels his way in there and gets an interview with the kid. I don't know who allowed this. It's fucked up. But he just like cried and said he was sorry and stuff. And he went to court. It took a while. But in 2020, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And the psychiatric report said he was suffering from clinical lycanthropy. Now, clinical lycanthropy obviously isn't you're not a real werewolf. It's not real lycanthropy. What it is a psychiatric disorder where you believe you've become an animal of some sort, often a wolf. And he said that he believed he became a dog, and that it had given him all these powers and stuff. But he was diagnosed as a lycanthrope and found not guilty in court because of it. Now, what makes this case very interesting is that this isn't the first time someone had ripped off all their clothes and attacked someone and ate their face in Florida.
Right.
Which something that evidently a lot of people have ripped off their clothes and act crazy in Florida. You know, there was a guy in 2012 who ripped off his clothes and attacked a police officer and tried to eat his hand. And in 2015, a 41-year-old man ran naked down the street in Melbourne, Florida, screaming he was God, and then proceeded to have sex with a tree.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with that last one you said. I think that's just...
Talk about a victimless crime.
Yeah, that's my Saturday night.
No, but the most famous one, they call this guy the Miami Zombie. You guys may have heard of him. His name is Rudy Eugene. Now, Rudy Eugene ripped off his clothes, attacked a homeless man, and ate his face. He ripped out his eyes. Here's the difference. Rudy Eugene was a black man, unlike our privileged frat boy. And when the police arrived, they didn't tase him. They didn't hit him with batons. They shot him 4 times right away, which begs the question, why wasn't this guy? And when they did, guess what? The victim, he lived. But with the privileged frat boy, they didn't shoot him, and the victim died.
Yeah.
So is there a we're seeing this both of these happen right in Florida.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting discrepancy there that we see.
Well, interesting in the sense that this is, you know, the default setting of America for the police, especially. That's some racist ass shit, Matthew.
Yeah, you know, I mean, could it have been that there was the police officers were trained differently? Police in a more privileged area aren't as quick to shoot. When asked why the officers didn't shoot him, they said that they were afraid the bullets would go through his body and hit the victim. But come on, man, he's like, you're right there. You know what I mean? It's point blank range. You know what I mean? It's not like you're far away.
He was preoccupied with the dude's face to where you could have just come up to the side of him and shot him in the head or whatever, or at least
easily.
You know,
I mean, they were all surrounding him. They're kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah. Yeah, police are just pathetic and not able to handle the most basic of things. They'll go apeshit on some poor unarmed black dude, but you know, when it comes to a cannibal who's sitting
Shoot him
there
4 times.
Yeah, they're gonna take their sweet time.
They're both cannibals.
It's a little bit like the Uvalde thing, where you had all these cops. All the cops in town came out and then just had a fucking picnic instead of actually doing anything.
Yeah. I found the yes.
So cannibals. What else you got for us this week about in regards to this case and cannibals and werewolves in general?
Well, on Wednesday, the Murder Coaster podcast, you can find all our 28 episodes on murdercoasterpodcast.com. This Wednesday, we are releasing an episode on the notorious and infamous Albert Fish, the werewolf of Wisteria.
Boo.
You know him?
Oh, yeah. This is the dude that would drive needles into his groin in order to punish himself, right?
That is absolutely correct.
All right. Yeah, I know a little bit. Was he a doctor? Was he, who was this guy?
No, he was not a doctor. Albert Fish?
Yeah.
He was a house painter. He painted houses. He was deeply disturbed. There's no doubt about it. He heard voices. He was the first internet troll before there was an internet. So before there was an internet, you would go in the classified ads, right? So he would go into the classified ads of the newspaper and find people, all kinds of people, maids, lonely widows, and he would write them the most disgusting letters you have ever heard. And he was actually arrested for that. He loved to and he couldn't stop writing up until the day he died. He was still writing these awful, disgusting fucking letters, and which is also how he got caught, because he had kidnapped this little girl, took her out to an abandoned house, chopped her up, ate her. And years later, he couldn't stop himself from writing a letter to the little girl's mother.
Oh, my God.
Because it was a huge case that this little girl was missing, because he came right to their house, took her right from the house. He's like, I'm going to my sister's birthday party for her child. This little girl would love it there. Why don't you let me take her? They didn't even know him. He was saying he was going to hire their son as a farmhand. And he took this little girl away. And so, it was a huge international even case, because this old kindly man came into this house ostensibly to hire this boy as a farmhand. And the family let him leave with this little girl, and they were never seen again. So he writes a letter to the mother detailing how he had chopped her up and ate her. It's a horribly disgusting letter. One of the most famous letters in all of true crime history. And the genius detective was able to look at the envelope, and there was it was an old envelope that had gotten from the Benevolent Butlers Association or something like that, and was able to track down that envelope, track down who it came from. And the guy who had it had left the envelopes, all these blank envelopes, in a boarding house. And they went to the boarding house, found out who had rented the room after this guy had left the envelopes there. And it was none other than Albert Fish.
Wow.
So that's some good detective work there. They got him. But it took years, many, many, many years.
What years was this? When did this all take place?
This was in the 1930s.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Maybe police were better back then. They actually did their job.
Well, it's interesting. I mentioned Fritz Hamann. He was operating in post-World War I Germany. As I'm sure you know, the hyperinflation, the unemployment, food riots. It was this terrible time. And he was the criminal underworld just flourished, because you couldn't get common goods. You had to go to the black market to get common goods.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He dealt in the black market. And so he was able to flourish there. And then you have America after the Great Depression and during the Great Depression. And there was so many kidnappings during that time. And it's just another time when there's not a lot of money, everyone's poor, everyone's struggling to survive, and it allows these criminals to thrive and get away with their stuff. You probably remember Charles Lindbergh's baby was kidnapped during this time, that very famous case.
Right.
So there was there was so many kidnappings that the New York Times had its own thing called the Snatch Racket, where they would just detail famous kidnappings that were happening. That's how commonplace they were. So this was just, because he had kidnapped all these children. They called him the Gray Man. It's absolutely terrifying, Albert Fish. He would show up, and then it's like the Slenderman. You know, Slenderman, the internet creepypasta or whatever. He shows up, and children go missing. And then he's gone. And they're like, who was this man? This tall, and they would be like, describe him. And they would be like, he was a gray man. He was the gray man. And then there was these little kids playing in a tenement house, I think in Brooklyn, in the hallway. And the one kid goes missing. And they go to the other boy and they're like, what happened to him? And he goes, the boogeyman got him. It's fucking scary as shit, man. And dude, he would take him out and fucking like butcher him and eat him. I mean, it's fucked up.
No, yeah, it's just that's scary as fuck. That sounds like a movie.
So scary. It does.
Well, on this Friday the 13th of Halloween season, it's only apt that we talk about the most horrible fucking spooky aspects of humanity.
It does not need to be Friday the 13th if you guys like to talk about the dark aspects of humanity.
I do it year
Just
round.
Tune into murdercoasterpodcast.com and we've got 28 hours of the darkest parts of humanity for your entertainment needs.
Pretty scary stuff out there. All right, everybody, check out murdercoasterpodcast.com. Check out Maddie's podcast. You're going to come back, next week, huh? What do you want to do, Albert Fish?
Anytime you want to have me, I'll come on here and fill your ears with humanity's darkest tales of horror.
Well, I'm going to go vomit in disgust and fear. So everybody, tune in next week. We're going to have even more ridiculously sad and depressing and dark, twisted serial killer tales. All right? Bye.
All right.